An article came out that interviewed some fans and asked for their opinions on some Blue Jays trades that they would want to see. Some of them just didn't make any sense at all. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And this article that we came across the other day, Nick, it just didn't make much sense to me at all. I mean, I don't know what some fans are watching. I don't know if fans even know what they're talking about at some point. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm talking about. But look, I mean, some of these trades just didn't make too much sense to me. It's interesting to talk about, though, because obviously they're pipe dreams and they're trades that don't make much sense, and they're basically just, I don't know, wishful thinking in a sense. So we're going to react to those. But Nick, I mean, this is going to be a fun one. We don't really do many videos like this, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, an article came out, and it's going to be a very, very fun one. We're also going to break down some realistic possibilities as well, because we had to throw a few of those in there because a lot of these aren't. Before we get into that, we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Your support's been unbelievable, but about 73% of you guys are not subscribed, so make sure to hit that button. And let's just get started with this article. It was done by the Toronto Star. They interviewed a bunch of fans, and it didn't just cover trade, they covered some other things as well. So I'll quickly start with this, Peter, and I'll get your overall thought on this. And if you're watching this video, in the comment section, play along. Let us know what your grades are for the season and some potential trades, what you think they are. But this was the first one that they asked the fans, was how would you grade the team's performance this season? When it comes to the Jays season and overall grade, the majority of respondents were on the same page. The leading mark was D, with 45% of fans saying someone needs the answer for how the season ended up. In a close second, 39% said that they're disappointed in a C. So, Peter, this is before all the trades, or before we break down all the trades. What would you give the Blue Jays season as a whole, as a grade? We'll have a video, I'm sure, later on in the offseason giving, a huge grade on everything. But for now, what is your overall grade of the Jays offseason before we move on to some of these wild trades?
I'd go C plus, probably C to C plus. They still made the playoffs. They still finished near the 90 win mark. They obviously just fell remarkably short of the expectations that we all had of them heading into the season. I mean, this on paper seemed to be the best collection of talent that the Jays have ever had. Probably one of the deepest teams that the Jays have ever had, in at least in our lifetimes, Nick. And I mean, their pitching was great. Their defense was great. It's just the hitting didn't come through. I mean, the pitching and defense was at a playoff level, was at a World Series level, if I'm being quite honest with you. And then the hitting was still stuck in spring training. So that's the analogy I like to use here. Obviously, we're all disappointed with the way that it played out. We're disappointed that they couldn't make some sort of a run, that they couldn't even win a single game, that they scored one run in the playoffs. But I think D is a little too harsh. D would have been if they missed the playoffs and won 70 games and totally fell flat on their faces. They still had an okay regular season, and it could have been a lot better had they just stepped it up a little bit more, but they didn't. And we got to live with that. And I'm going to go with probably a C plus just because of the regular season success. And then whatever, playoffs are over with. Let's move on. Move on to 2024.
Yeah, I agree. I think an F would be like you said, 70 wins or below 80 wins, and then a C anywhere, missing the playoffs. We made the playoffs, so that's the only thing we'll take from that. I agree with your C plus. Let us know in the comments what your thought is. Now let's get into some of these trades. Some of them aren't as bad as the others, so feel free to let us know what your favorite one, if any of these are. Peter, we'll go through maybe 3 at a time because there's about 6 to go over total here, and let's just start with the first one. This is Danny Jansen and Spencer Horwitz, the Royals for Salvador Perez. Now, out of all of them, now this one doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, but on Twitter there was some stuff going around. I think this is the one that people may have actually agreed upon the most. That might be not realistic, but not a complete fleece of either way. I'm curious to see what you think, Peter. You're trading a younger catcher in Danny Jansen and a young prospect-ish in Spencer Horwitz. But Danny Jansen is very injury prone for a guy in Salvador Perez who is more of a DH role at this point of his career, but hits an absolute ton of home runs and is behind the plate and healthy for the most part. So what would your be? This would be a win now move, to say the least, even though I'm still not sure that Salvador Perez at this point in his career is a better player than Danny Jansen. What are your thoughts on this top trade of Danny Jansen and Horwitz for Salvador Perez?
This might be the worst one of the 3, and then we're talking about trading Vladdy for Jose Ramirez in the next one, who has a no trade clause and can't be moved. And that says a lot about this trade that we're talking about here. I mean, Danny Jansen is much better than Salvador Perez is. He just can't stay healthy. Obviously, Sal, he's a legend in Kansas City. I think he's going to retire there. Don't think they're going to look to trade him. But he's not a good catcher anymore. He's a terrible defensive catcher, and he has been for a few years now. So his framing is some of the worst in baseball. I don't want to trash the guy, but he's just not a player that you want on a team that is contending right now. The Royals are rebuilding. They're trying to build up the confidence of a lot of these young players. Sal is the perfect guy to hone in those skills and to be that leader and mentor to those young guys. But when it comes to winning a World Series, he's done that before, and his time has passed. He's been a below average catcher for a couple of years now, and his hitting is barely above league average. Whereas when Danny Jansen is healthy, he's one of the better power hitting catchers in the game, and he can run the bases pretty well too. So if you do trade for Salvador Perez, you have two catchers that can't run the bases. What do you do in that scenario? You have two guys that you got to pinch run for late in games, and that handcuffs you as organization. So it's a no go for me on that one.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a great one. Some fans thought about it because of Perez's power, but obviously availability is important. But at this point in their career, I'd definitely stick with Danny Jensen. And we'll gloss over. I mean, the Guerrero one is a bit wild. Guerrero for Pete Alonso wouldn't do. Guerrero for Austin Riley, I'd debate. Guerrero for Aaron Judge, I'd do. And then Guerrero for Mike Trout, I probably wouldn't do. I don't know if you have any disagreements there, Peter, but I don't think I would do any of these besides maybe Riley and Judge.
I don't know. I don't know. This one's tough, but you would have to believe that there'd be other filler added in there. I mean, Austin Riley, I think I would do that just because he's signed long term and he's one of the better third basemen in all of baseball. You figure to have an opening at third base because Matt Chapman is probably on his way out here. And you could also move Riley to first base. I'm sure he could play good first base. He's a big guy. So, yeah, I would do Riley. I would do Judge. I think I would do the Judge one as well. Um, Trout, I'm with you. I
I
wouldn't
don't
do
think
it.
so.
Too much money, gets hurt too much. And Jose Ramirez, I would also do, but he has a no trade clause, so that's not realistic. And Pete Alonso could be a sneaky one as well. I know the Mets are in the market to trade him. The Blue Jays want power. Who better than Pete
Just
Alonso
not for
if you
Vladdy.
want straight up power? Yeah, the guy is just a straight up masher. He's guaranteeing you 40 to 45 home runs a season, maybe even more if he's having a phenomenal year. But I would consider it. I would definitely consider it if the Mets wanted to kind of overpay for Vladdy and build around him and throw the bag at Vladdy and really build around him. I would consider it, but I don't know. It's a good conversation to have for
Yeah,
sure.
they're getting a bit weird. I'm gonna skip this last one. I can maybe a quick opinion on it because we have a few more to go before we wrap up here. It's Varsho Romano and David Schneider for Arenado. There's not a world in any place that this happens. We just traded for Varsho. We're not going to trade him now. Romano's our closer. We don't have another closer, especially with Jordan Hicks most likely leaving, and then David Schneider. I mean, yeah, Arenado's a great player. He had a bad year last year, and that would be a pretty big overpay. I'm just going to gloss over that one completely. I don't even want to touch on that one. If you guys want to go crazy in the comments, feel free, but I'm not going to touch on that one. Now we have two more here before we wrap up. These are a bit wild. So this one's interesting a little bit, I guess. It's Vladimir Guerrero for Nolan Gorman, Tyler O'Neill, and Richard Palacios. And then it's also Guerrero and Alec Manoah for Spencer Torkelson and Matt Manning. Peter, I'll let you tackle both of these before we wrap up. But interesting trades here. Do any of these interest you?
I mean, the first one's obviously I think it's a bit undervaluing what Vladdy brings to the table. Nolan Gorman is like a second baseman who hit nearly 30 home runs this year, so he's got some big time power. Very young guy, under team control for a while. And obviously, we've seen the Jays not hold back when it comes to trading with the Cardinals. So I could see that being a legit possibility. You get Canadian Tyler O'Neill in there, who had a down year, but had an MVP like season a couple years ago. So if he can bounce back to that form, then yeah, it would make sense. I like that trade. I like that trade. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's probably the most realistic one that we've seen. But the second one, I mean, that I don't understand. Torkelson had a good year. He hit a lot of home runs and he looks good at the plate. I think he'll be good for a long time. But T- Torkelson is who you want to be kind of like Vladdy. You know, you want Torkelson to have a Vladdy type ceiling, and why would you trade the two of them for each other? You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. And obviously, Manoah trading him after a down year like that for Matt Manning, who had an okay year with Detroit, but ultimately probably has a lower ceiling than Alek Manoah, just doesn't make sense. You're trading guys that were on down years if you're the Blue Jays for two guys that kind of overperformed and you don't really know what you're going to get from year to year. So I don't know. I wouldn't do that one either.
I don't think there's a world or realm of possibility that they trade Guerrero and Manoa in one single trade. That would just be that would
No.
be just makes no sense. Guerrero, you can make your case for. Manoa, you can make your case for separately. Even then, I don't think that would happen. But that'll wrap it up. One quick thing: if you made it this far, they had a little bit there about what free agents you target, and a lot of Jays fans obviously leading vote is Ohtani, followed by Sonny Gray, J.D. Martinez, Blake Snell, Joey Votto. And we're obviously of our opinion of we obviously want Cody Bellinger and players like that. And then they also said, fans gave some of their opinions here, so feel free to pause and read some of these. They sound like some of our some crazy Jays fans out there. But that'll wrap it up. Pretty fun video today. We wanted to cover some trades because this article was blown up a little bit on Twitter. A lot of people were saying, "What on earth are Jays fans thinking?" And I'm curious to see what you all think about it. If you like this type of video, let us know. And if you want to see our video from yesterday, click the video on your screen now. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.